Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Masters Toll here in Seoul, South Korea. I am Brian Kibler, joined by Gia, and we're going to be bringing you all the action from round number 9. So we're getting very far along in this tournament. We're really starting to see not just the metagame shape up, but really see certain decks sort of rise to the top and others not doing so well.
It's true, and I would say the decks that rose to the top are not necessarily just Mage. We saw Priest have some pretty dominant performance yesterday, and we are going into a Priest matchup for this next one, I think.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of decks that were kind of off the beaten path have a lot of success. I mean, we just saw Stas win with his Highlander Hunter deck, which, if you look at the statistics from day one at least, was the top performing deck overall. I'm sure due in no small part to his undefeated record yesterday.
Yes.
But that's one of the decks that I think a number of players brought due to their expectation that there would be so much Mage. And we even saw Stas take down what is believed to be one of the deck's very poor matchups in the form of Aggro Rogue last round.
It's true. I mean, I have to say I'm really proud of Stas as someone who's my teammate and also a Grandmaster from Asia Pacific. Probably our region is the most looked down upon among the three, but it's really strong performance for this tournament. And then for this next round, we are going to be seeing that Priest that we sung the praises of yesterday from Empanizado, a representative from Latin America, another region with some pretty strong performances, I think, throughout this tournament. I also saw Topo Pablo make top 16 as of yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always great with these sort of global events, right? That we're able to see players from all regions really coming together and competing against one another, which we don't have that many opportunities over the course of the year to see. And particularly when players from regions like Latin America and Asia Pacific are able to have those sort of breakout performances, they can really sort of not only make a name for themselves, but also really build more respect for their region and inspire other players.
It's true. And as for Empanizado's opponent, Magoho, I'm not too familiar with his background in particular, but do think we saw him on stream yesterday, and he is rocking a Control Warrior, which is the toughest matchup for Priest, I would say. But we saw that Suni was able to take a win versus
Yes.
that with some incredible play. So I want to see just where Empanizado's Priest level is at.
Yeah, I mean, Priest is one of the decks that I think was probably the least expected to really show up in this tournament. It's had a bit of a surge on ladder to some degree recently, with a number of players sort of experimenting with it. But I think that a lot of people sort of look at it and they think of it as kind of a just sort of flash in the pan, sort of oh, it's only because people don't really know what you're doing and expecting it kind of thing. But a number of players have had a lot of success with it so far, and I believe if actually looking back at the numbers I just referenced, I believe it was the second best performing deck just behind Highlander Hunter.
Yeah, that is really impressive. And funny that you should mention something being a flash in the pan. People don't know how to play against it, and therefore it's good. I don't necessarily think that's a bad way to approach a tournament
Sure.
that's so early into a meta. Like, there is value in playing a deck that's a little bit off the wall simply because people will probably not have spent that much time practicing against it.
And I think that often is particularly true in specialists because not only do people not necessarily have kind of the hours of preparation going into understanding the ins and outs of the matchup, what you want to do, and how you're planning for each individual turn, but they are far less likely to have a secondary or tertiary deck that's specifically dedicated to
Right.
beating what your deck's trying to do. So we're going to take a look at the matchup that we have coming up. You see Empanizado on your screen right now. As Gia said, he is going to be playing Priest. That I would argue that it's more of an extra arms priest than it is a Divine Spirit Inner Fire
Sure.
priest, though it does have Divine Spirit Inner Fire as a core element of what it's doing to close out the games. His opponent will be Magoho, who we did see on stream yesterday. I believe we saw him take down was it Silvors, the Shaman player, and he is, of course, playing Control Warrior, which is kind of one of the boogeymen of the format right now, but one that has not really seen a ton of success in this tournament, thanks in large part to the popularity of Mage, but this is one of the matchups where the Warrior can be quite strong.
It's true. I'd imagine Control Warrior, if it was getting wins, it's because it's been dodging Mage. That would be my first inclination because it does kind of catch all the other matchups having a decent win rate outside of maybe Hunter, but that's not too popular an archetype. But it will beat the Rogues pretty consistently. It should beat the Quest Shamans, and it should have a pretty good matchup against the Priests. So I can understand why there's still a couple of those Control Warriors floating around in the top echelons of this round 9 of Swiss, despite there being so much Mage.
I mean, we did see some amount of Warrior have success, for instance, in Vegas, right? Mage was one of the most popular decks in Vegas, and to be fair, Mage also had a ton of success because Warrior was the most
Right.
popular deck in Las Vegas. But a lot of players playing things like Double Super Collider, at least against the Conjurer's Calling, sort of more focused Cyclone Giant versions. And those are actually the versions that have been performing the worst here, right? We saw the Reno Mage actually having the best results among Mage decks in this event so far. And I wonder how much of that is due to sort of this additional resilience they have by being sort of less in on the Conjurer's Calling game plan.
Yeah, it's also curious to note that because at Vegas, most of the Warriors were Bomb Warriors,
Also
and
true.
now Warrior with Bombs has kind of fallen out, and everybody's going for the control package. Bomb Warrior, despite being a little bit low power level nowadays, just because of the new cards with the Taunt package and the Restless Mummy fitting in much better in Control Warrior. Bomb Warrior is one of those decks that just curves out in many situations, which gives it an additional win condition versus certain other matchups. So that might be also a reason for the disparity in the win
Sure.
rates.
Yeah. I mean, Restless Mummy is obviously what you mentioned, one of the most powerful new cards from Savage Ultimate. I think it's quietly among the most powerful. A lot of people just sort of look at it as kind of a marginal upgrade
Right.
on Militia Commander in a lot of matchups, but the fact that for instance, if you're playing Priest and you're like, okay, I have injured Tolvir and a injured Blade Master, it's like, okay, well I have a Mummy, they're both dead unless you heal them.
Right.
And it really makes a big difference in those matchups where your opponents are looking to play out a couple of early, sort of small to mid-range minions. It used to be going into your opponent's turn 4, having like a pair of 3/3s was pretty good. Now it's like, oh, you're just asking to lose
Right.
because you're just going to get 2 for 1 and lose your entire board in addition to losing in the resource battle.
Yeah, and that's why it's very commonly replacing militia commanders. There's very, very select situations where you would rather have a militia
Right.
commander, which is just if your opponent plays a 2/5, and I don't know any decks that play 2/5s and 3/5s these days.
All right, I'm building a Life Weaver deck. I'm gonna take out all those Restless Mummies. Then my Life Weaver just still dies, the Restless Mummy.
Take your medicine.
What
That's
you
she
what
said,
you
right?
need is a 1/5.
Mm,
Then they can't kill it because it attacks into it. You gotta have
right.
you gotta build the pacifist deck. It's no tomb can hold me. It's like, oh well, my tomb doesn't attack back.
Exactly. So we need pre-nerf Evil Miscreant.
Ooh. Well, I mean, even Evil Miscreant now doesn't die to Mummy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the key. You gotta play. I don't know, Evil Miscreant. And I don't know what you're doing with it.
You
But
just play it on curve.
yeah, you're just
No
like, okay,
combo.
Miscreant.
It's a 1/4.
Go.
That's the right
How
stat
can you
line.
kill this? You can't. You got a Mummy.
Right. So talking a little bit about the players for this next round, I'm not too familiar with Magoho, but I'm giving a quick once-over at Empanizado's profile, and he's been on a tear throughout the past year. He's had qualifications also to Bucharest and Las Vegas, so he will be attending all 3 of them, or will have attended at least 2 by now, and he placed 3rd at the WCGC on America's qualifier, so that's pretty impressive as well. He qualified for WCG Mexico at one. He was either 1st or 2nd. I think both of those top 2 are able to make it there. And
Okay.
we did see him, I think, at the Summer Championship.
Yeah, I believe that it was last year the summer championship that was at the Blizzard Arena the very first time. He was one of the competitors there, and I believe he made. I want to say he made top 8, but my recollection is failing me. I know that he.
Yo, this website says 5th to 8th.
There we go.
You did it, Killer.
Yes. But yeah, no, I mean, and he's definitely put up a number of solid performances, and this is an opportunity for him to sort of improve on that. So let's take a look at the deck he will be using in this match in the hopes of putting up another strong result. And as you mentioned, it is this Priest deck that we have seen a few times, a little bit different than some of the other versions. He's actually is playing the double Light Warden, so he's playing a more aggressive version, along with 2 Holy Ripples.
Right.
So this is a version that I think is better positioned to beat the aggressive decks and better positioned to put even more pressure on the slower like mage decks. But I do think that he is in a much worse position against Warrior with this build.
I do agree. I mean, we saw that the other version is more in the vein of what Sunyi, what Physics King, what Frozen were bringing, which is cutting the Light Wardens, cutting the Holy Ripples and the Mass Dispel, and playing a little bit more removal. You play Silences, you play Forbidden Words, and I think a bit more mid-game, just to give you a way to not get locked out by the taunts.
And one of the things that we did see when this deck, or a similar version of this deck in the hands of Suni, went up against Control Warrior yesterday, was that Octosari
Yeah.
Dead Ringer package in one of the side decks. That is not going to be available to Empanizado. So even after game one, he's going to have much fewer options to really give him explosive board potential against the Warrior. So let's take a look at Magoho's deck here. As you mentioned, he is playing Control Warrior. Looks pretty typical compared to most versions of Control Warrior we have seen. Only a single copy of Towncrier, Shield Slam Omega Assembly Rover.
I was gonna say this is
So
almost looking like a Reno deck to me.
Well, actually, if you look at this is sort of half control, half bomb, right? Because he actually does have the Clockwork Goblins in there, and the Blastmaster Boom. So it is a pretty biased toward putting on disruption against the Highlander decks with that bomb package, and kind of trying to sort of split the difference here.
And I would say maybe that hurts the matchup against Priest a little bit more when you don't have consistent removal. The one of Shield Slam, I feel like, could be a big problem, trying to remove the tall minions that Psycho Pump can get, that Injured Blade Master can heal up to, and Ahmed and all of that.
All right, well, going into our first game here, it will be Empanizado going first, but with no one-drop. And that's actually a pretty big deal, because he does have the extra arms in hand, but no way to take advantage of it immediately, get the pressure going.
So Magoho can... Oh, there's the Mummy you mentioned for not this turn, but the future scenario of having a 2-3 and a 4-3 could very well happen. But Empanizado here probably just going to use the extra arms to take a value trade onto this Elec.
Yeah, the Elec is, a little bit of an issue here. Certainly, seeing that it's coined out, you expect there's a good chance there will be a Clockwork Goblin coming down to follow it up. And one of the things that we talked about quite a bit when we've seen this Priest deck on camera before is that it is a deck that really thrives on its ability to put the pressure on the opponent, and does tend to struggle if it does fall behind. A big part of that is the fact that a bunch of the cards in the deck are buffs, right? Your deck doesn't do anything if you don't have a minion in play. So I would expect that Empanizado does what he needs to sort of secure his board position. And yeah, extra arms, taking out this Elec is a good start.
Right, and crucially, because the Tol'vir can still be healed up to 4/4 next turn, it can take yet another value trade onto this Clockwork Goblin. Looking at the two deck lists, I just kind of find it funny how streamlined the Priest is. It's running all 2-ofs except for the one Legendary and the one Master Spell. So it runs 2-ofs of everything it can.
Which is quite the opposite of Magoho's deck.
Exactly.
Magoho's deck is 1/1/1/1/1. Also, Empanizado has no cards that cost more than 4 mana in his entire deck. So he is very focused on getting that early game advantage and pushing it as much as he can, while Magoho has a lot of flexibility in his toolkit.
Right. So now Empanizado is probably thinking about how best to set up a board into a Restless Mummy, but I don't think he has a very good way of doing so.
It is hard to do so.
Yeah. Because even between more arms and healing, it would after the trade onto the Goblin, it would still die to a Mummy. So is there perhaps a way to... Nah, the Acolyte would also just get run over by the Mummy.
Yeah, there's not really any great options for Empanizado here. I feel like he could heal, bump, and then and then more arms. That still is in range of
only the first half
just
of a
right,
yeah,
or a Wrench Caliber.
So he may just not play any cards this turn and try to squeeze a bit more value out of his hand. And I can totally respect this.
And this does a couple of things. Now if Magoho does play a Restless Mummy, then he could at least play, say, Wild Pyromancer plus more arms, or just Holy Ripple and something to kill off the second half of it. Magoho is going to go ahead and get the Wrench Caliber online, so he still has both halves of a Restless Mummy and a Wrench Caliber swing in order to keep the board for their next turn. And this is going to put Empanizado in a really tough spot, because he is just facing down a lot of threat of removal already, and that is not good for what his deck wants to do.
Yeah, and this is why on paper it seems like the Combo Priest struggles against Control Warrior, or even this kind of half-and-half bomb version. And despite the inconsistency of Magoho's list, he still has 2 wrench calibers, so you can reliably expect that there will be removal on turn 4 between the double wrench calibers and double restless mummy. So I wouldn't say this is an outlandish outcome at all.
Oh, and so now, yeah, this is actually an interesting option from Empanizado here because, yeah, okay, you want to Restless Mummy this down. Sure, I'm going to get some cards off it at least. And same thing, you want to Dino-Matic this? I'm drawing 5.
Yes. I'm sure Twitch chat is saying, overdraw right now. You can't overdraw for 1. But that makes 0 sense because Empanizado severely needs card draw. The way that the priest can sometimes cheese out this matchup is by setting up a board which can be comboed with Pyro, Spell, Cleric, and Circle of Healing. You fill up your hand, and you try to go for a push over 2 to 3 turns, just 2 to 3 boards, and you hope that the warrior won't have consecutive answers for each of those. And by the time something sticks, maybe you can land Divine Spirit.
And yeah, a big part of it, I think, is landing something big like, say, High Priest Ahmet with a Divine Spirit even just by itself. I believe there's only a single copy of Execute in Magoho's deck.
I can't believe he even fit in the one of Execute. He's like,
He's got a Plague of Wrath too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What isn't in this deck?
Divine Spirit.
Okay.
Priest cards are not in the warrior
Yeah,
deck.
Fan of Knives isn't in here. Conjurer's Calling isn't in here.
See, we found stuff.
Okay. Yeah, he has no taunt package, which has become very popular throughout the recent weeks. No Tomb Warden or Megadillo, so maybe use those spaces to make room for this type of thing.
Well, and here, Mago is saying, okay, well, or rather, Empanizado is saying, well, I'm going to put you to the test, right? If you can't kill this Ahmet right now, then all of your damage-based removal is going to get a lot worse. And if Empanizado is able to start his turn with a 7 health minion in play, that's really scary. Even if it is a Wild Pyromancer, because that does make Divine Spear Interfire shenanigans a little bit more awkward. It still at least threatens a lot of damage.
Right. And the 7 health breakpoint makes it just awkward enough that he would have to overkill by 2 if he used the mummies and the wrench caliber. And it also means that the mummies can't go separately and try to damage the remaining minion.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good identification from Empanizado, but Magoho is still forced to respect the Amet, so the turn makes a lot of sense.
Well, Circle of Healing draw for Empanizado does not do very much here. He does not have a Northshire Cleric, can't get any big card drop burst off. Also doesn't have a Divine Spirit, so he can't really make a big push with this the 7 health Pyromancer.
Right, and because there is the one of BGH, of course, in the warrior deck, he can't really feel completely comfortable just going in with an inner fire with a 7/7 here. I'm thinking the turn is probably along the lines of just play a Blade Master, heal it up, create a similar board state to what was on board last turn, which was a little bit awkward for Magoho to deal with.
Yeah, this is definitely not an easy position for Empanizado because the pressure is still on him to end this game as soon as he can, but his hand doesn't do that very well. And one of the things about playing this style of deck against Control Warrior is that yes, you don't want to walk into their removal, but you don't really have the time to play around everything. And sometimes you just sort of need to put yourself in a position where yeah, there's going to be something that's powerful against you, and you can't really do much about it.
Yeah.
So here it's like, okay, I'm just going to try and slow push with what I can and hope to use the resources I have available when I do pick up something that can give me the ability to do a bit more of a push.
Right. Against any type of warrior these days, there's always that little invisible timer of how close am I to turn 7. If I've not done enough by then the boom comes down. Maybe you start to regret not going in a bit more with the resources. But I think Empanizado has been putting on a decent amount of pressure, getting in 3 or 4 damage every turn, and just hoping to draw more of his cycle with that time bias. Pretty sad Dino-Matic, but
Just
didn't
split
have a
some
better
damage
choice.
around, yeah. All right, there's a Psychopomp, and there's a few.
There's Amet in the pool.
Yeah, there is Ahmet in the pool, and there's also an injured Tolvir.
Right.
Are the possible things now. And also Empanizado can trade off this injured Blade Master, who is in fact even more injured than usual.
Yeah. Heavily injured Blade Master. 2nd degree burns. Yeah, I kind of like that. Just trade that off, and then 2 out of 3 times you get something that has 7 health, and 1 out of 3 you get something that has 6 health.
Right, yeah.
Problem is what to do with the rest of the mana. I imagine it involves healing up the Pyromancer. It also kind of feels bad to miss the 4 damage to the face, but any mech sticking is a little bit scary.
Oh, I was actually just going to go ahead and try to get a bit of a value trade here. We could see just Circle of Healing into maybe the Cyclopomp. Or just, okay, Injured Blade Master into Circle.
And then he's going to be a slightly injured Blade Master.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a painful situation because you have a board, you just used your Circle of Healing, but the Pyromancer did a bunch of damage to your board, and now like a Plague of Wrath would be super sad. Ooh, there's Boom.
Right, with 3 bombs in the deck, I believe.
Yeah, and Boom's obviously pretty powerful here, but you do have to be sitting and thinking, okay, well, what happens if I just say go and this board gets to hit me? Because that's effectively what playing Boom here does. You don't have Mad Genius in order to give your bombs rush, so you're taking a minimum of 11.
Right.
And if your opponent does have, say, Divine Spirit Inner Fire, that's adding another what?
Well,
go to 14.
imagine healing, so
it adds another 10. So you're actually not dead to just Divine Spirit Inner Fire.
And the other...
interestingly, there's also the bombs.
Exactly. The funny thing about the Pyro interaction with the bombs on board means that playing any spell is a little bit risky for Empanizado.
Right.
So Magoho is going to go ahead and just brawl this board. I do think that the boards from the Priest don't generally go wider than 3 minions, so this does warrant some removal, but he doesn't have that Plague of Wrath in hand yet to fall back upon. And, ooh, Divine Spirit was actually the draw.
Yeah, and this does give Empanizado, he can heal. Well, he'd actually want to... it's actually an awkward situation. You want a Divine Spirit, you want to heal Divine Spirit. Divine Spirit first, you go to 12. Actually, either way, it's awkward because it's the Pyromancer.
I'm looking
Heal Divine Spirit Inner Fire, yeah.
I'm looking at maybe just Psychopomp this turn and
Sure.
try and set it up for next turn. The Psychopomp now has 2 Blade Masters in the pool and a Namet, and at worst, you summon back a 2/6. So I think that probably sets up lethal for next turn. And should the Boom come down on turn 9, Empanizado then has access to Mass Dispel into the stuff to prevent the bombs from clearing off his Pyro or any of the minions that stick.
Yeah, Empanizado taking his time though.
Ooh, he's actually going to cycle this turn. Okay. Well, given that there are very few taunts in the deck, I can understand the reasoning.
Yeah, well, if he's just gonna play the Psychopomp anyway. So he's just not gonna get the heal off here.
Well, that hand from Priest is all the same color.
It's all the same color to me.
Well, that's true.
I'm colorblind over here, but...
It's very difficult for me to tell the art of Divine Spirit and Holy Ripple apart from looking from afar.
Yeah, they're just vague shapes.
Yeah.
All right, well, there's Boom. So, if Empanizado... Oh,
We're
Boom
going
plus
in.
Warpath. Yep, Boom
All
plus
right.
Warpath, just trying to blow everything up.
That seems like a pretty bad, terrible outcome, in fact.
Well, it's not the best, that's for sure.
I just saw a lot of ones and then a couple of things going face.
Right.
I think that's definitely below average.
And Magoho, he's got a bit of a look in his face.
Right. Empanizado can use these Holy Ripples, which are essentially dealing 2 damage apiece because of the Pyro.
Right, and they are spells you can cast through your Pyro that don't kill your Pyro.
He's still got to use, I think, Power Word Shield to finish off the Boom without trading the Pyromancer, but he could simply just trade the Pyromancer this turn, and then instead use the rest of his mana to heal and or try and combo off this Injured Blade Master.
So he can heal it up to full and then Divine Spirit Inner Fire if he wants.
So 14, which is out of range of the 1 of Omega Devastator, but in the range of the 1 of Big Game Hunter.
Gotta figure out what you're playing around, Yeah. And frankly, this is a reborn Blade Master. So if he does just get the burst damage in now, and it gets killed, it can come around for a second taste, at least as a 4-power minion.
And here's an alternate proposal. We can do the Sunni play, which is Divine Spirit without Inner Fire, which gets it out
Sure.
of range of both of those single target removals, but not out of range of Execute. There's just too many things.
Yeah.
So there's the BGH. So Empanizado at least a little bit rewarded by his patience with the Inner Fires, but Mega Assembly can come online now too. I'd imagine the turn always starts with Omega Assembly because even if Magoho just wants to go for triple Snip Snaps, he will still have the mana for that. Yeah. Oh, Tomb Warden. With the Mass Dispel used, that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, the Tomb Warden does make getting any damage through pretty difficult.
And also just this combo of Scrap Hound with either Zilliax or Snip Snap. Although this won't have Rush this turn.
Okay, yeah, the hero power is actually kind of important. If Empanizado draws a way to buff this Blade Master, he just kills.
Right.
He just wins the game on the spot. If he draws Powered Shield or an extra arms, he can buff this to 20. Oh no, it's actually 1 off if he gets exactly one of those, right? Go to 9. No, it would be 22.
Yeah.
Did not find it though.
So actually the armor didn't seem particularly relevant to me.
Right.
I was thinking if you're going for Snip Snaps that turn, maybe just try to get them all on board. But I was more interested in putting a Zilliax on the board because it's a taunt and he has seen the Mass Dispel. And then the turn after he can follow up with more taunts.
Yeah, I mean you see a bit of a shake of the head from Magoho here. I think that he had a plan and realized that it did not quite come to fruition as intended.
Right. Although he did present a board state, which is quite awkward for Empanizado because I think he's very interested in using the Pyro to draw off the Acolyte, but it will be giving Magoho a little bit more armor because of the Rover, and should the Scrap Hound stick, it will also be giving more armor.
I think Empanizado may play this into... Oh, he's going to Inner Fire. Okay. He's got the second Inner Fire, so that makes some sense. And then possibly Holy Ripple. Attack, then Holy Ripple. Yeah.
And this will put the Blade Master in range of BGH, but looking at a deck list like Magoho's, I would not fault Empanizado for not playing around things at all because it's too much.
Well, Magoho's up to 30 now. And yeah, it does have... We can even just play...
Wow, that's full clear.
BGH plus that. It does clear off the board. Actually, well, doesn't necessarily because of the BGH, because the BGH could die too. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on board. So yeah.
And if it double hits the Acolyte, that's kind of against what Magoho wants to do also. So instead, he's going to go Shield Slam over BGH, which honestly feels quite bad. Because the VGH is a very conditional removal, whereas Shield Slam, like, as long as you have some armor, you tend to remove any target.
It's true, but this does give him a body on the board in order to attach Zilliax. And the Dynomatic it guarantees a clear this way, whereas with the BGH it would not, as we were discussing. So now Empanizado finding his clerics. This is not the point in the game where you want to find your clerics. You wanted your clerics a lot earlier, where you could generate a bunch of resources and make it very difficult for your opponent to keep up with everything you're doing. But we're at the point where there's not even that many cards left in Empanizado's deck to draw.
I think he wants all of them. He can get up to 4 this turn. So with a natural heal and then the Neverset Ritualist, squeeze every last bit of healing out of that. And what exactly can he get from here? I think there's still one more Psycho Pump. That's a good one because it could easily revive something with 7 health. The Light Warden's not quite good this late on in the game.
Well, I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Because it does give him something that can at least represent, a meaningful threat. Because, if you... I think he's actually played both of his Pyromancers, though, so it's much more difficult for him. And both his Holy Ripples?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's much more difficult for him to actually get, like, big AoE heals going on that can make the Light Warden, say the Light Warden is just the single thing that makes it through. If you have the spells to balance out with the healing, it can get in for a ton of damage. But now we see just 2 cards left in Empanizado's deck. And Magoho, he has quite a few options here. The Ziliax is where he's going to start. This is going to buff up that Light Warden.
True. A very cute interaction there. And I think the last two cards are Circle of Healing and the other extra arms.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so is there... If Empanizado heals his own face, attacks the Light Warden in, then extra arms, can't extra arms, Divine Spirit, Inner Fire. Not enough mana. Yeah, this is the problem, and also just like Magoho's at 40.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a
go
tough
for
scenario.
20 with a Cleric.
The fact that there is this body in the way makes it difficult to get through.
In terms of things that Empanizado is thinking about, there's still one more Brawl in the deck that is a 2 of. So he could be a little bit scared of that. But I do like just investing into getting a 7 health minion because that's obviously way more efficient to use the Divine Spirits on. And if he does it now, it makes a lot of sense because the rest of the turn will involve trading these other minions that you don't want in the Psycho Pump pool.
Yeah, I mean, Empanizado could just extra arms the Ritualist attack.
In the light's name.
Okay, he's going to go with just the getting the Light Warden through, which is, you know, makes sense given if your plan is to just get one thing as big as possible with double Divine Spirit, you want to have the buffs left.
So speaking of as big as possible, he would be 1 mana short of doing the extra arms thing that you said, with the double arms and double spirits.
Yes.
So I think the max would be 36 off of the Blade Master.
Well, you could play extra arms, divine, Inner Fire.
Right, that's 36, right?
Right, yeah. Oh, there's a Brawl.
Oh my gosh,
And
what a draw.
It's Brawl with Devastator in hand, too.
True. So anything that survives will get devastated. The best outcome for Empanizado is the Reborn, I guess.
Right. And yeah, Devastator on the 4/1. So now there is just a Cleric. So this is
GG.
kind of Empanizado's best hope. I mean, he can extra arms, divine, Inner Fire this, but you know that does only get to what 7, 24, 28.
And a BGH is waiting in hand, and should that even fail, 2 Mordants represent 2 taunts to buy Magoho even more time. Of course, Empanizado doesn't know that 2 Mordant
Gotta go for it.
is there, but yeah.
So yeah, gets in for 28, but that does leave Magoho with quite a bit of life remaining thanks to all that armor he stacked up.
It's crazy, actually. Between the healing he got from the Ziliax and the armor he got from the Scrap Hound and the Eternium Rover, there was quite a lot of, you know, sustain that Magoho got off of his card generation effects.
Yeah, and we see that, you know, Empanizado does draw his entire deck, but it's not enough. And I do think that if Empanizado had found those Clerics earlier and had been able to assemble all those tools before before Magoho was able to naturally draw through his deck and find all of those answers, maybe that would have been enough. But I do think we're seeing structurally why the Warrior deck is considered to be a pretty significant favorite over this Priest.
It's true, and it's not just because Magoho's list is running so many different forms of removal. I would say he didn't even have that amazing of a draw. The Dr. Boom was quite low in the deck. I think he drew the Restless Mummies naturally and not off of Town Crier. So
he's only got 1 Town Crier.
That's true. But so as far as average panouts for specifically Magoho's deck, maybe that was just, you know, what you would expect to see normally, and it just got there pretty comfortably towards the end, I might add. He still was sitting on extra 2 Mordants. So.
Yeah, and now going to, you know, the secondary and tertiary decks, we were talking, you know, before when we were looking at the decks on the screen, how we don't really have the same options available for Empanizado that we have seen some of the other players use. His secondary and tertiary decks include like Acidic Swamp Oozes. You know, he doesn't really have the sort of powerful late game tools like Chef Nomi and Octosari that we have seen some of the players use. Even, you know, for instance, Frozen was one of the players who did bring this deck. He was playing Double Seance, Nomi, and Grave Horrors as sort of his plan against Warrior. And frankly, you know, he did not do very well against Warrior with that plan. But the plan that we saw Suni use, the Octosari plan, did look quite powerful, right? Because it does give you the ability to churn through your deck to find the Nomi Seance to make it very difficult for them to keep up.
Yeah, and Empanizado, I guess, didn't really have Warrior on his radar, which I would say is not necessarily a bad idea, but I think it kind of lacks a bit of respect given that people just did consider Warrior to be the second best to Mage.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things going on. One might be you just don't quite find the plan that beats Warrior, so you say it's not worth using one of my secondary, tertiary decks in order to try and combat something I don't think I can beat anyway. For instance, I had never, thought of playing Octosari, Dead Ringer, what is it, Crypt?
Dead Ringer?
No,
Oh, Coffin Crasher.
Coffin Crasher. I was trying to say Crypt Keeper. I'm like, that is not right. Coffin Crasher and Octosari. Like that's a very specific package.
It
is, that
yeah.
plus Seance Chef Nomi to have against controlling Warrior deck.
And that really does reward the players that, were in the lab for this 10 days between expansion release and the start of the tournament to really see if the Priest was worth bringing if they could find that one way to shore up the Warrior matchup. So in that sense, there is some merit to the Specialist format, but I am still quite excited to see how Grandmasters pans out in the next couple of weeks with the new format in store.
Absolutely. All right, well, Magoho here, he has a pretty solid opening. Got the Restless Mummy, Shield Block, Shield Slam, so some decent removal. And Empanizado, crucially, has the one drop this game, but does not have the extra arms to follow it up, so isn't able to get that pressure on right away in the same way.
I really do like just playing the Wild Pyro for the pressure on. I'm going to draw a comparison to a Holy Wrath Paladin for the Priest here, because in that matchup, you would like to play Pyro on curve just to shave away any extra damage in the early game that you can, while the Warriors' removals are not online yet, like pre-turn 4. In that sense, it's also kind of similar because Priest tends to deal damage in the increments of around 22, 14. It's not quite the 25 of Holy Wrath Paladin, but it's still short of the 30. So any early damage you can get with the Pyro will be relevant.
Yeah, it matters quite a bit, and this is not a matchup where the removal for Pyromancer is relevant, right? You're looking to use it just as a minion pretty much all the time. It is a little bit awkward here because now Mago has his single copy of Elec, which can't even be removed by this Pyro without a little bit of help.
Yeah, it's so awkward because using Holy Ripple means that you won't get the heal before the Pyro activation goes off, and it will mean that the damaged Cleric will be on board. So maybe that's something he could heal next turn, but he doesn't really want to be using the 2 mana on turn 4 when he would rather develop an injured Blade Master. However, I do think he's kind of forced to just get rid of the Elec, otherwise it takes too clean of a trade onto the Cleric.
Yeah, the Cleric is really important here, and I do expect that we will see the Holy Ripple used in order just to get the 1 damage on this Elec so that the Pyromancer can trade in.
Oh, I need to look away.
And specifically, Empanizado decided that he wanted to... This wasn't an order lull situation. This was, I want the damage from Pyromancer on my Cleric so I can heal it, get the card, and get the additional attack on the Light Warden here. If he had not done that, there would be no target for him to heal, and then just this 3/3 would challenge his board once again.
Right.
Ooh, another Cleric.
That's a good one.
It is. And we may see Cleric come down, heal, and then the Light Warden trade, and then Restless Mummy attacking into 1 power minions. Can't kill them both.
Oh! This is the situation.
It's the dream.
I love it.
That's how you get them, is that you have minions that are too weak to kill theirs. But the problem is these are 1/3s, so the Mummy kills them anyway. These aren't the 1/4s and 1/5s that we were dreaming about as our anti-Mummy card.
But the fact that it's Cleric means that when the Mummy goes in, he can then heal the Mummy and get another draw.
It's true. And then the Mummy's on board for the rest of the game and you die.
All right, I think the dream draw for Empanizado here is Circle of Healing because he has 2 injured cards in hand and the injured Mummy. No such luck, though. Realistically, it's probably just going to be Blade Master heal.
Well, the Tolvier does at least protect your Cleric, too.
True.
Not from any additional removal. But, yeah, this is definitely a very awkward spot for Empanizado. And while it was, nice to pick up the Cleric so that you got, like, an extra draw earlier, this does mean that cards like Circle of Healing now don't have the opportunity later on to get a big bursts of card draw, which is really one of the ways that you do sort of get ahead in this matchup.
Right.
Last game we did see the clerics end up getting buried, and were very low in the deck for Empanizado, very deep in the deck rather. And now he does have both of them early, but isn't really able to leverage them for that much of an advantage. They basically just each cycled because they're going to draw one card apiece, or maybe two for this one.
And the fact that he used a Pyro already means that the Acolytes will be tough to activate as well. So Empanizado's card draw is going to be a little bit starved after this turn. And he did go for the 12-year, I think, exactly because of what you mentioned. The small chance of protecting the Cleric, Empanizado deems is worthy.
And now, okay, he could have used, Empanizado could have traded Cleric with the front half of this this Mummy, right? Which would at least mean that the Mummy alone couldn't kill the injured Tolvir. He's hoping that he can protect the Cleric. You've used the Cleric and the card draw off of it as more valuable than possibly having this Tolvir survive for another turn, which I think is correct.
Yes.
I think that getting any additional cards and assembling his combination, of buff cards, Divine Spirit, Interfire, etc., is more valuable to him than having a slightly larger minion in play.
And even though it's very unlikely that the Cleric sticks, Empanizado deems that it is his best avenue of winning. If Magoho doesn't have either of the Dinomatic, Second Mummy, or Wrench Calibers, but unfortunately, just the trades and then Dinomatic will clean up the board pretty nicely. As for secondary and tertiary for Magoho, I don't think it makes any sense for him to switch over to any of them because his secondary is meant for the Warrior Mirror with the EMP operatives in there. And the tertiary, the secondary is meant for, I guess, Mech Paladin and that type of thing, and the tertiary is meant for the Warrior Mirror with Elysiana and Karen Bloodhoof.
Yeah, both these players just sticking to their primary decks without really much to change for any additional value. And in this game, frankly, we saw how Empanizado had. He had a decent draw last game, didn't have necessarily really explosive draw, but was able to, eventually get through his entire deck, assemble his combos not quite enough. This game, Magoho, I think, has a much better draw than he had last game. He has Dr. Boom in hand, going into the middle turns. And, really the pressure is on Empanizado even more in order to actually make some progress here, and I think he's going to have a harder time of it.
A really tough time. I mean, the only plays that use up all his mana this turn are using 2/3 drops. Each Acolyte dies to one trade from the Dinomatic, and we kept mentioning how important card draw is to the Priest deck, so I'm sure he doesn't feel good about just throwing them out there. I think that Blade Master heal up is what I would lean towards in this situation. Maybe try to survive until a turn 8 Psycho Pump and a Met play in the other order.
Well, Plague of Wrath to draw for Magoho here. A very powerful card in the matchup. Does have just Shield Block, Shield Slam if he wants it.
Really clean, especially since he has his turn 7 play locked and loaded.
Yep. Just gonna go ahead and fire it off. And Empanizado, does have this High Priest Amet in hand. And finding a way to get a strong board with Amet may be one of the best routes to victory that he currently has.
Yeah.
All right, Amet into Divine Spirit is not bad here necessarily. All right, just got Amet into Acolyte. I'm sure chat is like, oh my god, you can overdraw him so much here. It's a 7 health. Dinomatic that, just get it done.
If all 5 of the Dinomatic charges land onto the Acolyte and then you take a trade, that is only 1 overdraw. That's pretty funny.
I mean, yeah. But this from Empanizado is, it does 2 things. One, you get the Amet down plus the Acolyte, which makes it difficult for Magoho to deal with both of them, and they each potentially represent a significant threat. 2, you are playing this into turn 7. Which is the turn Magoho wants to play Dr. Boom. And if you're able to neutralize the threat of Dr. Boom more significantly, that does at least make your life easier moving forward. It looks like Magoho may go for it anyway.
Yeah, I think, wow, going for just a War Golem to contest these, I can actually see it. It makes a degree of sense because the minion threats are very scary. Oh, sorry, there was
there's one bomb in the deck.
That's my mistake.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the other Dr. Boom is what he was at least initially considering, but he's going to go ahead and play this. This is a little bit scary into the Acolyte. in particular. Also, there's this Psychopomp.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is the opportunity for Empanizado. He could either heal or extra arms into Divine Spirit if he really wants to, or just extra arms and heal just to get the Amet to 8, and then Psychopomp and get both a 3/8 Psychopomp as well as whatever comes off of it as 8 health.
That's all the value. I'm really digging the use of Divine Spirit though, because putting everything to 12 health is a nightmare for Warrior. How are they
It's really
doing
big,
that?
right?
Yeah.
And obviously Divine Spirit is a card that you frequently want to use in combination with your Inner Fire, but when you're playing against a deck like Warrior where you don't really necessarily have that option, whoa.
Wow, is he?
I think he's just extra arms. He's just going to take this. Oh, okay.
Okay, so he wants to clear the boom and also.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought he might have played Acolyte, but.
Interesting.
I didn't think that the boom necessarily looked like that much of a threat that he needed to pay this much respect to it.
I mean, what you're doing here is protecting your other minions pretty well. This is creating a situation where you end up with a pair of 3/8s.
He could have ended up with with 3 12 health minions and a 1/7 Acolyte.
Right.
Which could have taken a value trade onto the bombs, gotten more draws. Granted, the Amet almost would have certainly died on the next turn, but it's dying this turn too.
Well, the problem, I mean, the problem with investing that much into anything here is that your opponent is playing a Brawl Plague of Wrath deck, right? So if you don't take off the if you don't kill the boom, you're both putting yourself in a position where your board is likely to die anyway, and the possibility that your opponent just Plague of Wrath and has a boom in play threatening you, which is exactly what would have happened if Empanizado hadn't taken that trade.
I do think that just giving up the 1/7 Acolyte for 1 draw, though, would really hurt any chance of taking the game back, should that type of situation occur.
I do agree that felt rough.
Definitely a tricky turn, though. And Empanizado is just going to use the Mass Dispel to deny some draw from Magoho, and more importantly, get some draw for himself.
Right.
He's setting on this Acolyte as his last form of card draw in the deck, given that both Clerics are gone, both Psychopomp used, so he can't even resurrect anything.
Right. And now, Magoho's thinking, okay, well, how do I best sort of address this?
Suiting up is how you address it.
Yeah, I mean, with that draw of the Snip Snap, Dr. Boom this turn becomes a lot more appealing because you know that you have the Snip Snap alongside all of the microbots possibly rushing in to just kill your opponent's stuff.
Boom is also a pretty good outcome here to clean up that 3-1 real nice. I am thinking that the writing's on the wall for Empanizado now.
Yeah, I mean, without some sort of big board swing plan like that Nomi package we saw previously, this is really a rough spot. There's just all these cards that just don't really do very much, right? We were talking earlier about how this Priest deck really has a hard time winning games where it falls behind. Just look at the hand. Neverset Ritualist, Divine Spirit, Circle of Healing. These are only cards that are relevant. Not only that you have minions in play, but you have minions that are actually like fighting for the board. They're actually doing things. And he's already used both of his Northshire Clerics. There isn't even ability to use these cards to draw more cards. They're just what they are. And what they are is not nearly powerful enough to win this game.
You can clearly see this weakness of Priest reflected in the results because it does have a positive win rate against everything except, of course, itself at 50% and against Warrior. I think this is the matchup where all the Priest players just assumed that there wouldn't be enough Warrior to justify bringing Priest. Or they felt confident enough about their sideboard. So that did reward preparation a lot, I suppose, for players like Physics King and Suni. I really think that the Octosari might be the 200 IQ.
Oh, it was great.
Bring.
It was definitely something that I was really excited to see.
Magoho is just gonna go through the motions here, even though the Dynomatic, yeah, even if it left a 2-1 up, that's not a big problem for Magoho at all.
And the Massive Spell's already gone, so there's no downside to suiting this thing up. Got more left in you, but Empanizado does not have very much left in him. He's got a bunch of spells that really want him to have a big board and does not have much of a board to speak of.
The
Oh, look,
last
Circle of Healing.
the last time we called this game too early, there was a chance of fatiguing from clerics, but there are no more clerics on either side
Right.
in this one. So I think it's safe to say that we're just in one of those situations.
I mean,
where
look at Magoho's body language. He's just sitting back, hands behind his head, reclining in his chair. He's like, okay, he's just in a position where he is, sort of mentally kind of checked out even.
Right.
And
you can autopilot from here.
Right. I mean, and frankly, that is how, with 39 life, Dr. Boom, board advantage, big game hunter, brawl in hand. He's got delivery drone coming up next turn anyway. He is just in such a strong position here that I think, we're going to see Empanizado just go for it. He's got to go Divine Spirit Interfire. And frankly, if there had been Divine Spirit Interfire, that's not even enough.
Yeah.
Even double Divine Spirit Interfire this turn would have been 32. Magoho at 38. There's that Divine Spirit Interfire, so BGH going to take that down, and with that, just 2 Circle of Healing in Empanizado's hand.
I've got the beast in my sight.
Complete error.
And there it is. Empanizado decides he has had enough, and Magoho manages to take a pretty one-sided series, to be honest.
Yeah, one-sided series with a deck full of 1 copies of all of your cards, and he's going to 8-1 now.
Yeah.
A very impressive score from Magoho. And even though I keep poking fun at the deck building, because I do think in terms of just deck building philosophy, when you're having so many just a little bit this way, a little bit that way, it feels very inconsistent, but somehow I was making it work.
One of the things about playing in a tournament with open deck lists is that if you do have a bunch of singleton copies of cards, some of which are kind of fungible, right? Like having one of this, one of that, a Plague of Wrath, a BGH, a Devastator, you can kind of get into your opponent's heads about playing around specific things, and that has definitely worked for him so far.
Yeah. It's something to note also when playing against Reno decks is that
Absolutely.
a lot of players tilt from, I got beaten by the one of, and, why is this a thing? But maybe it's also a challenge for other players to just, calculate the odds, like, can I afford to play around a one of? So very interesting to see how that will pan out throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, and we have more action coming throughout the rest of the day at the Masters Seoul and Seoul, so stick around. We'll be right back.